Happy Monday, beginners, and welcome to Bali's for Beginners. Hopefully you had a good week. Last week we talked about bite handle, safe handle, and just the basic opening, getting your Bali song open and closed. Basic manipulations, and we'll continue with the basics this week and talk about the wrist pass. The wrist pass is kind of maybe even more simple, but super important to master just because it's such a fundamental thing that you need to know in order to not get yourself cut. So we're going to take a minute here to look at the wrist pass, and that will be this week's Bali's for Beginners lesson. Alright guys, so the wrist pass is not so much like a trick or a move as much as it is just kind of a fundamental part of flipping, and that's why we're going to talk about it on Bali's for Beginners. And kind of what it is just a move with, it's kind of like a flick of the wrist to keep the blade from making contact with your hand. So let's say I'm doing a rollover, which we'll actually talk about next week, but let's say I'm doing a rollover and I'm catching on the bite handle. Obviously, if I do a rollover normally, from the bite handle to the safe handle, the spine will make contact here. Now the wrist pass is simply kind of this flourish where as it's coming down right here, you kind of do this flick, like this kind of just flick outward to make the blade not make contact. So if I was going from safe handle to bite handle, it would look something like this. And that way I can make the blade not make contact with my fingers and not get cut. And it kind of just looks like, and that is all the wrist pass is right there, right? And so honestly, a good way to practice this is to just start by grabbing your safe handle and swinging it in kind of this motion right here. And I'll do a little bit of slow-mo of this. And basically what that'll do is it'll allow you to kind of get a feel for if the blade nicks your fingers down here. You'll know because the spine will make contact. Once you feel confident, obviously start doing this with the bite handle and make sure that that blade never makes contact. Obviously you'll get little cuts learning, different tricks. And I mean, just right there, I mean, that's just a fundamental part of flipping, is just that little wrist pass. So it's kind of just that flick of the wrist, and that's really all there is to it. And it's just mastering kind of the arc at which you flick your wrist in order to not get cut. Alright guys, that has been Bali's for Beginners round 2. Hopefully you learned something about the wrist pass. Now this is probably just an innate thing that you learn to do as you're flipping. Obviously you don't want to get cut, so you're naturally going to do things to make your body not get cut. But I think it's important to point out that it's just fundamental to be good at doing the wrist pass, so that no matter what handle you're catching on, you're always going to be able to keep yourself out of danger. And that's kind of just a big part of flipping. So this has been Bali's for Beginners, week 2. Leave any questions or comments below. Thanks guys.